Welcome back. It's no newsflash that our cities are becoming more congested, petrol prices are skyrocketing, so an increasing number of countries are now looking at better ways. Earlier this year on Weekend Sunrise, we brought you a story from New York City, where opinions are mixed on plans to turn Times Square into a big pedestrian mall.
And this past week in Sydney, a major spat broke out over plans by the city mayor to increase the number of bicycle lanes. The New South Wales Premier basically overruled her. Let's bring in two people with strong views on this issue. Cate Faehrmann is a Greens MP in New South Wales, and Jason Morrison hosts Breakfast on radio station 2UE. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Now, Jason, we'll start with you. Do you accept that we need to reduce the number of cars on our roads?
You won't have me disagreeing at all with that. Congestion in Sydney particularly, but any major metropolitan area is hideous. And anything we can do to reduce that is a fantastic thing, as long as we're realists.
Okay.
Yeah, so you'd be advocating, instead of for, bicycle lanes and bicycle flow areas, to increase public transport to
yeah, I mean, look, if there'd be a way that people working unusual hours of the day, people needing to get to different business centres of a city like mine, for example, Sydney, could get to work more reliably, faster, in a way that was comfortable, yeah, absolutely, yeah, good, go for it.
Now, Cate, many Australian cities stretch out over a very large area. You know, the suburban sprawl is not new to Australia. So is cycling really a practical alternative to driving for most people?
Yeah, absolutely it is. I mean, we've got some people who are cycling, say, 15 kilometres in and out, for example, every day, commuting every day. We've got to remember as well that take Sydney, for example, it's like made up of little satellite cities, so Parramatta, Chatswood, North Sydney, right? So it's not all about commuting into the CBD. So what I'm hearing and what a lot of people say in surveys is that they would cycle more if they felt safer. And a lot of, it's why I think you get a certain demographic, a certain age of usually men, I think between 40 and 55 or something, actually feel brave enough to take on traffic. This is particularly in Sydney. People just don't feel safe, and it's not about the sprawl, it's about ensuring that those people that want to ride to work and, say, live in inner suburbs or whatever, are able to, and at the moment people don't feel safe doing it.
Well, on a bike, 15 kilometres isn't that far, is it?
That's right.
Well, and not if you're really fit. I mean, possibly the problem
if you're transporting something. I mean, if you're transporting something, you're carrying your equipment to work, you're carrying a child to school, these are all things that are realistic. I mean, the approach has been for a while, we have lost sight of the fact that both need to happen, but you don't sacrifice one for the advantage of the other. And I know that in every city it's a different story, but in my city the approach has been, well, let's take away a lane of traffic and let's put a bike lane there. That's not the solution. More lanes of traffic.
Happened, Jason? That has not happened. What's happened is they've taken away
about 500 metres that way.
Lanes for car parking. And when you think about, for example, this is in Sydney, and we know that a lot of the conflict at the moment is happening in Sydney. They're taking away car parking, say, for 25, 30 cars that would have parked between, say, 2 and 4 hours, and then new cars. Think about the hundreds of people who are commuting. Now, seriously,
that's an enormous extrapolation of reality.
So much. No,
an enormous stretch of the truth.
It's reality. All of people from certain media outlets, I have to say,
like mine?
And News Limited, are suggesting that it's taking away from traffic flows, but it's not. What it's doing is taking, some car parking away, but actually ensuring that people are able to cycle to work, more safely and take...
Well, who would be parking in those spots if those car spots were still there?
People working, people...
people working don't park in a two-hour zone.
No, people working do. What, people who do contract work, people who do air conditioning repair work, people who do... plenty of people park in these spots. But let's forget about the parking.
There are still low zones.
The point is that in peak hour, when the problem is for Sydney and cities like ours, in peak hour, when you take away a lane, that's a lane that traffic can't flow in. In peak hour, there's not cars parked there, because in peak hour, they're clearways. Our issue in big cities is getting people to and from home. During the day, in fact, traffic is something you can cope with. But it's the commute that's the problem. And the approach has always been, let's try to, and it's a punitive approach, let's try to make the cruise home in the car so bad that people go, enough, cannot stand this anymore, have to try something else. Well, Cate, I accept your argument that if you live within, a visual of the city, it's a reasonable thing to want to ride a bike. But most people don't. I mean, you talk about the satellite cities. This city is vast. There are people who ring me in the morning who spend 2 hours getting to work in traffic. 2 hours.
And the more
there's no option for them.
Sure, but the more that you take people out of their cars, say for example somebody driving again in Sydney or riding from say Drummoyne, right? That isn't necessarily inner Sydney, but people do cycle from Drummoyne. So the more you are able to get people to feel comfortable about doing that, the better it is and the more comfortable it is for other people who have to drive their cars. Like, we have to get people out of their cars, right? We've got to do it. Our trains are chockers, our bus lanes are congested, there are too many cars on the road. So what do? Okay, well, let's try and think about getting people onto bikes. And I have to say, in terms of health impacts, what that means in terms of your health if you start riding to work and the cost on the budget is incredible.
Well, I appreciate you care. I appreciate you care
I'm not
about my
caring,
health.
I'm caring about the economy.
We're running out of time here, but I really want to ask you, this old chestnut, if bikes are going to become the new cars, do we need to talk about licence and registration fees for if they're going to use the roads like hard, do they register?
One thing we've got to remember with cycling at the moment is governments have to encourage as much as possible people onto bikes. Really, to deal with congestion, we have to get as many people cycling as possible. So the more we throw up that limits it and makes it more difficult and makes it cost, the less people will ride. So at the moment, there's a lot of barriers, including feeling unsafe. If we put registration in there as well, I can guarantee you that cycling numbers will go down. So it's a catch-22 there.
Bikes also don't sort of churn up the road the way that cars and trucks do.
No.
We'd be really interested to hear your views on this, particularly if you're in one of the cities that has gone, you know, further down the cycle route. For example, Melbourne. How's it working for you as a motorist or as a cyclist in Melbourne, having dedicated cycle lanes, you know, from the suburbs to the CBD? But yeah, love to hear your views. Yeah. Cate, Jace, thank you so much for that this morning.
Thank you.